Hi, my name is Tom Griffin. I'm an artist for Griffinites Comics, and I'm going to be showing you a little bit of my process on a page from a book called Wow Signal. One of the first things I do when I start a page is I start translating the layout from the storyboard into a final image. If you saw right there, I have a 15% opacity brush that I'm working with. That's to give it a feel like a pencil. If I want a darker line, I can go over multiple times with it. As you can see, I'm just creating the layout, basic layout of the page, where the panels go. And then adjusting it, just doing little tweaks as I need to. One of the things that I try to keep in mind while I'm working on a page is that it's one page in a larger story. So if it's a key page or key panel where something intense is happening, I'll spend a little more time on it. But if you do that, if you spend too much time on a page, you can end up overworking it, which can make it look sloppy. Which can make it look inconsistent. And one of the things I've found with any work is being consistent really helps. If you notice, earlier I was working on a first panel and then I decided to change it. I'll talk about that in a little bit. Right now I'm just creating the panel frame layout in Adobe Illustrator and then putting those frames, copy and pasting those frames into Photoshop. And when you copy and paste stuff from Photoshop to Illustrator or from Illustrator to Photoshop, the color always changes a little, so you have to be aware of that. So you either need to adjust the saturation of the color or the lightness or darkness of the color of anything you bring from one to the other. At least in my experience. Right now I'm just inking the page. Sometimes I'll add in backgrounds to smaller panels if I kind of have an idea of what I want to show there. I mentioned before that the first panel was originally a house on a landscape. And that's because I was going to talk about her origin a little more in these panels. And then I decided to change it and just stick with talking about this character's shady past. And that's it. Because it just seemed out of sorts to talk about a character's origin. Right now you'll see me pop back and forth to images of an ear. That's because the ear gives me a really difficult time. There's certain things, you could be an artist for 100 years and you might still need references for something. And now I'm coloring, and as I'm coloring you might see me pop back and forth between an earlier page, and that's just because I'm drawing my color palette from there. And there's other things that I'm just making up a color palette right away. These are textures I made in Adobe Illustrator that sometimes I'll pull out and use on a character. As you continue to create, it's fun to start creating your own textures. I've done that for this kind of suit. I've done textures for a snake. You can do it. You just end up collecting them after a while. And a lot of people will turn them into brushes. I haven't done that yet. I probably should take the time and do that. And if you've read the story of Wow Signal, you'll see different improvements as I've gone along. different things I can do now that I didn't used to be able to do with lighting, or just even creating a quick image, to get an idea across. And that's the other thing with comics, is sometimes you're not trying to create something that's, looks like it's painted or looks realistic, but you're trying to get something across that's stylized to a story and that gets an idea across. And sometimes people use cheats, like a character gesturing a certain way, to kind of make people recognize, oh, that's what they're talking about. That's what this character means. So right now, I'm just putting the first layer of paint. I just figure out what colors I want for everything, and then I color it. And that first layer will help me put shadows on, put lighting effects on, different things like that. And also, you might notice in the first 4 panels that I have them as primary colors and green. I feel like color, especially when you're talking about someone's history and creating some sort of timeline, is really fun to work with, to tell a story. And I've actually done something similar on a separate page of the book. I did the same thing on page 5, where you're just trying to get in touch with each section of the ship. And so each section of the ship is a different primary color. And once I finished kind of coloring and doing lighting and shadow on the page, these panels, I've been adding a colored overlay on them to kind of emphasize again that color. And in this one panel, I ended up painting a background to where they're in like a parking garage or something. That's one of the cheats I was talking about, where you do something that people have seen before, so they immediately recognize what's going on. One of the things I'll do is I'll use different brushes for, depending on the texture of the surface I'm working on. I'll still use that base layer. But I'll use, anywhere from a smooth brush to a brush that's a watercolor brush, to a soft round brush. It really depends on what I'm working on. There's even times, if it's a close-up, there's even times where if it is a very close-up, then I'll start putting in skin textures. And you can achieve that just by doing things like speckling and stuff like that. So yeah, it really depends. Like you'll see, I give that earring more of a shine than I do the skin. Even the eyes, I give a little shadow. You gotta remember, shadow is cast on everything. That's my old man advice voice. That advice actually came from a TA years ago, and just never forgotten it. But and she was not an old man, but her advice is given in the voice of an old man. Anyway, I don't know. One of the things you can see on Captain Montenegro there is she's got a little more shine on her nose. I don't know if you've ever noticed that. People always seem to have very shiny noses. Guess I don't know if it's the oil on the skin or what. But them's got shiny noses. So the page is pretty much finished. I'm now in Adobe Illustrator and putting in the text from the script. For this book, I actually decided to make the word bubbles in non-traditional boxes. Because anytime I work on something, I try to do something a little different. I don't want to get stuck in a box, So I try different stuff. It's good. It happens. And you might be able to hear my cat purring right now. Because she's sitting here. She just loves attention. And pretty much all you'll see now is that I copy and paste everything from Illustrator into Photoshop. And I really hope that I've been getting better with the editing. It was very nice of my brother to lend me a microphone so that I can actually do voice recordings without crappy quality. And that's pretty much it, folks. I really hope that you've enjoyed this little quasi tutorial and that it helps you. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment. If you have any comments, feel free to comment. And don't forget that you can visit our webpage or donate on Patreon. Thanks for reading.